Welcome to J Cheese, where every crime hides a deeper shadow. Today's story is The Dying Light by Joy Ellis, a gripping psychological thriller set in the desolate beauty of the Fens, where a detective haunted by grief uncovers something far more sinister than he ever expected. When a respected officer is found dead and a series of disturbing events follow, nothing is as it seems, and every step forward drags you deeper into the dark. Press play and step into the dying light.
Chapter 1. Matt Ballard allowed a smile of satisfaction to spread across his face. He turned to his partner. Liz Haynes was smiling too. "We did it. Our first case solved, and paid for." Liz squeezed his leg. "We really cracked it, didn't we?" It had been a gamble, but in the end turning private had been the only course the two of them could take. Liz had been forced to give up working in the police force after an attempt on her life had left her unable to meet their medical requirements. As for Matt, he had served his full time, but at 53 years old he was still fit, and far from ready for the allotment and the bowling club. Opening a private investigation business seemed wholly appropriate. They could pick and choose their jobs, and Liz could adjust her work according to the requirements of her condition. Now they had a check in their hands, a happy client, and the man they had been investigating was with their former colleagues in the custody suite at Fenfleet Police Station, waiting to be charged. "Textbook, wasn't it?" he chuckled. "Not that I think all the cases we get will be that clear-cut." "Very satisfying," said Liz, then added almost wistfully, "but in a way I'd like a bit more of a challenge." "Be careful what you wish for, my darling," Matt warned her. "We used to say things like that when we were on duty, then the next chap would see us up to our elbows in one of the shittiest cases we'd ever had." "True, but... oh, you know what I mean. That was a bit tame, wasn't it?" Before Matt could answer, his mobile phone rang. "Will, how's tricks, my friend?" He switched to loudspeakers so that Liz could hear. They had both worked alongside D.I. Will Stonebridge, and had been saddened when a severely damaged elbow had seen him step away from the job he loved. There was a long silence. Then Will's voice filled the car. "I have to admit, things have been better. Any chance of me popping round for a cuppa and a chat? I'm beginning to think living on this fen is making me mildly neurotic. I need a dose of Ballard and Haynes's common sense, if you have some to spare." If he was trying to make light of something, he wasn't doing very well. Matt glanced at Liz. She was frowning. "We're on our way home right now. How does half an hour suit you?" "Kate's in her studio, so she'll be working until late," Will said. "So that's perfect. I'll see you soon." He hung up immediately, as if he were afraid they'd change their minds. Matt took a deep breath. "Well, that sounds rather ominous." "I hope Kate isn't slipping back," said Liz softly. "That girl has suffered enough." They had become close friends over the years, so Matt and Liz were among the very few people who knew the Stonebridges' true story. Kate Stonebridge was a very successful children's book illustrator. She had been working on a series of books called Fairy Dreams, featuring fairies and elves and other magical beings. They had been so popular that now the accompanying merchandise was outselling the books. Kids all over the globe were wearing T-shirts, using pencil cases and sleeping under duvets that featured Kate's creations. She and the author had cleverly introduced a new character into each latest publication, which had kept sales of the books and merchandise at record levels. Along with Will's glittering career in the force, they seemed to be living a charmed existence. However, beneath the surface, there was little magical about their life. Will and Kate had lost their baby. Kate had almost died in labour. She survived only after a life-saving hysterectomy robbed her of the chance of giving birth again. Naturally, Will had been devastated, but he held on to the fact that he still had his beautiful wife. Kate, on the other hand, had been terribly affected, needing countless months of counselling. Depression had followed, culminating in a short period in a psychiatric unit, and then a regime of drugs whose side effect was a debilitating ennui that made doing the work she loved impossible. Just as Kate was starting to improve, reduce the medication, and begin painting again, Will had been attacked by a crackhead, and his arm had been badly broken in 2 places. As soon as he had recovered enough to drive again, they had decided it was time to move away from their old home and all its bad memories. They hoped, in new surroundings, they could move forward. They could hardly believe their luck when they found Holland House, an old property on Whisper Fen. They had now lived there for almost 6 months. "I'm not sure Fen life is suiting our Will, are you?" said Liz thoughtfully. "He's alone so much when Katie's working. Perhaps it's getting to him." Matt agreed. Will has always been active, and let's face it, suddenly having to leave the career you'd been expecting to follow until you were pensioned off is very hard to swallow. He looked at her. "Well, you know about that, don't you, my love? It's certainly a shock, but you can't go back and change the past, so you just have to move forward." Liz winked at him. "And sometimes things turn out better than you ever expected, huh, Mr. Ballard?" "You're so right, but we've been lucky. Even though we went through some very dark times, we aren't as fragile or sensitive as Kate. She was always delicate, and as Will is the first to admit, she's never really got over losing their baby. Probably she never will." Matt eased the car into the lane that led to Tanner's Fen and home. "I wonder why Will wants to talk to us so urgently. I'm beginning to get a bit anxious." "Me too." Liz stared out over the miles of lush green fields of vegetable crops. "Matt, what do you think of their new home, Holland House?" He exhaled. "Well, I've known it all my life, so I've never really thought about it. It's in a beautifully remote spot, and it was an absolute steal at the price they paid. I've always thought it an imposing sort of place. It still needs a lot of updating, probably hasn't been touched since old Lady Holland was younger, but—" "No, I don't mean the practical things. What do you feel about it?" Matt shrugged. "I don't feel anything, really." Maybe that's what I mean," Liz mused. "Our home always makes me want to smile, but Holland House seems, well, lifeless." Matt laughed out loud. "You didn't smile when you first saw the old Ballard family pile. As I recall, you told me it looked like a museum. No, a mausoleum." Liz tried to look contrite and failed. "True, but I didn't hate the place. It was simply that I could see what it was crying out for. We've stamped our mark on it now, and it's warm and welcoming." Matt pulled into the drive of Cannon Farm. "Well, they haven't really been at Holland House long enough to make it theirs, have they? Will is still restricted by that damaged arm, and Kate spends every waking hour working, or so it seems. Give them time. It will be their dream home one day, you'll see." Liz didn't seem convinced. "I think it will take more than a few paint charts and an order from Wayfair to make that place a dream home. Well, that's just my opinion." Matt had barely got his front door key in the lock when Will Stonebridge's car drew up behind theirs. One look at his face told Matt that his friend was far from okay. His smile seemed forced, and his eyes definitely weren't smiling. "Come on in. I'll get the kettle on." Liz hurried off in the direction of the kitchen while Matt ushered Will into the lounge. "We'll wait for Liz and the coffee. You look like you need to offload a bit, Will." Matt smiled somewhat anxiously at his old friend. "You've got that look we used to have when a crappy case got really exasperating." Will gave a humourless laugh. "I recall the feeling well. Life is a bit like that right now. But the thing is, I'm not sure if it's me and I'm reading too much into things, or whether I have every right to be bothered. Well, we were coppers for a long while, and we do tend to see the negative side of things. And you were one of the most intuitive detectives I ever worked with. So if there is a rat, you will definitely have smelt it." "A while ago I would have agreed with you, but since I had to give up the job and we moved here, I just don't feel like that man anymore." "Why don't you talk to Liz, Will? After all, she went through exactly the same thing. She too was retired out of the job she loved. She might be able to help, and if nothing else, she's a damn good listener." "Oh, I'm not going to lay all this on her. She's got her health problems to contend with. And the two of you are happier than I've ever known you to be. Take no notice, I'm probably just feeling sorry for myself. Anyhow, it's got nothing to do with what I want to talk to you about." Will lowered his voice. "I'm starting to realise that I don't think I ever came to terms with how ill Kate became after losing the baby, and the effect it still has on her. She's so vulnerable, Matt, and so mercurial. She changes in the blink of an eye." Matt nodded. That couldn't be easy to cope with. He was about to respond when Liz arrived, carrying a tray of coffee and chocolate biscuits. "I thought this sounded serious enough to hit the hobnobs." She placed the tray on the coffee table and flopped into a chair. Will chuckled. For a fleeting moment, Matt caught a glimpse of the old Will. Matt handed his friend a steaming mug. "Okay, Will, what's bugging you?" Deliberately, Will set the mug down on the coffee table. "Actually, I want to hire your professional services." Matt sat up straight. "What, as investigators? Why?" "Something is not right on Whisper Fen, and I'm a bit too close to start digging around myself. Added to which Kate is on a deadline and working all hours, which means I'm running the home, shopping, feeding us, and trying to work on the house at the same time. I'm run ragged." He raised his hands. "Oh, I'm not complaining, honestly. What Kate is doing is amazing, and I fully support her. But I don't have the time or the inclination to embark on an unofficial investigation." Absent-mindedly nibbling on a biscuit, Liz had her gaze fixed on Will. "So, what do you think is going on?" she asked. Will took out a small notebook from his inside jacket pocket. "Several small, seemingly unconnected incidents. It's possible that they mean nothing and I've blown them all out of proportion, but listen to this." He looked down at his notes. "Whisper Fen is only a few miles from Tanner's Fen, and having lived here all your life, you might know a couple of the people concerned. Have you heard of a woman called Amelia Swain?" Matt nodded. "The German lady lives quite close to you. Husband died quite a while ago. Nice woman, as I recall. I had some dealings with her husband way back after his business was broken into. Oh, good, that could make life easier. Well, recently, someone has been aiming a series of malicious acts at her. I only found this out last week. She has put them down to prejudice, but I don't believe that for 1 second." Will sipped his coffee. "The thing is, she doesn't want to bother anyone, and she certainly won't make an official complaint. So I wondered if we could engineer an accidental meeting with you both, so you can get her to talk about it." "What kind of malicious acts?" asked Liz, offering the biscuits to Will. "For starters, someone killed her cat." He pulled a face. "Disgusting. Then someone snapped the lock off her shed and trashed everything inside, and—" He paused, frowning. "And I think there is something else, but she clammed up on me." "Well, you certainly don't need to hire us, Will." Matt looked at Liz and raised an eyebrow. "We'll see what we can find out, but as your friends." Liz nodded vigorously. "Of course. And we've just concluded the case we were working on, so we can pitch in immediately. Tell me, how do you propose to set up this accidental meeting?" "She'll be going to the farmer's market in Fenfleet tomorrow. Her old car is packed up, so she'll take the bus from Whisper Corner. If you were to bump into her and give her a lift home? I know the bus times, and she never misses market days, so you're sure to find her there. Sound okay to you?" "Yep," said Liz. "And if she already knows Matt, that should work well. We'll tell her we were on our way to see you." "I'm happy with that," Matt said. "So what else is bothering you?" "A man named Gerald Grove. Ever heard of him?" Matt frowned. "The name doesn't ring a bell. How about you, Liz?" She shook her head. "Nothing. I've seen him before, I know I have. It must have been to do with work." Will's expression darkened. "And I don't like him." "Ah, we might need a little more than that," Matt said. "I don't recall anything he actually did. He just gives me the creeps. He lives a quarter of a mile away from here in a lonely, ramshackle old place on the edge of the marsh." Will looked at them both. "You guys know that feeling, don't you? The one that screams out, not to be trusted." They did. "He turned up about 18 months ago, and he seems to spend an inordinate amount of time wandering alone along the sea bank and marsh paths. Which brings me to the other thing." Will frowned. "The pain from my elbow and my arm sometimes keeps me awake at night, and I've taken to getting up, trying not to disturb Kate. Some nights I go for a walk. I've seen a vehicle heading down the marsh lanes. As you know, they go nowhere other than the marsh and the estuary. Or that old mill that's waiting for demolition. No one lives out there, so where is it going and why? Add to that the lights right out in the wash, in the area around the Fenfleet Deeps, and I'm getting pretty twitchy." He munched thoughtfully on a hobnob. "Thing is, I've asked around, and it seems I'm the only one who has ever seen the vehicle or the lights." "This is getting interesting," murmured Matt. "Though it sounds as if the three are probably not connected. Maybe not." Will sat back. "Look, I really am happy to pay you. We are pretty comfortable since my injury, and Kate rakes it in from the illustrations and all their spin-offs. In fact, I'd feel much happier if you took it on as a proper job." "Let's just make a few inquiries first," Matt said, uncomfortable with the idea of charging an old friend. "Test the waters. See if there really is anything to investigate. And we'll take it from there. Maybe just expenses, if we need to lay out any cash. After all, they had embarked on their new career to keep themselves occupied, rather than to earn a living from it. Deal. If anyone can put my mind at rest, it's you two. Will sat back, evidently relieved, and they began to chat about inconsequential things. He'll have to come for lunch. You'll be amazed at my newfound culinary skills. Liz laughed. Ah, yes, the king of the microwave. If it didn't finish cooking with a ping, then according to you, it wasn't real food. All in the past. His smile faded a little. When Kate was so ill, I had to take charge of feeding us, and she needed good food, not some reheated microwave dinner. It was a wake-up call. I must say I quite enjoy cooking now. So how about Thursday, the day after the market? Then you can fill me in on how you get on with Amelia. I'd say call in after you drop her off, but Kate's agent and author are coming down to pick up the draft images of Kate's new character, so we'll be pretty tied up. Thursday will be lovely. It'll be nice to see Kate again, Liz said. Look, I have to warn you, she could be absolutely fine. He sighed. It could be just us for lunch. If she's in the middle of working on something, she might not want to interrupt it. No disrespect to you, I promise. It's just the way she is at the moment. The deadlines don't help with her stress levels, and I'm inclined to let her do what she has to. Of course! Matt beamed at his friend, secretly disturbed by what he had just heard. If we see her, great, but no pressure, okay? Will drained his coffee. I suppose I'd better get back. I'm so pleased you can check all this out for me. He stood up and smiled at Liz. And you were right about the hobnobs. We clearly did need them. He pointed to the half-empty plate. I'll see you Thursday. Come at around 1. They waved him off and went back inside. What did you make of all that? Liz asked. He's strung out like a washing line, Matt said. And I get the feeling that all at Holland House is not sweetness and light. I'll be very interested to know how our lunch date goes, said Liz, carrying the tray, backing through the kitchen door. But in the meantime we have our rendezvous with Mrs. Amelia Swain. Tell me what you know of her. Matt shrugged. Not much. She lives in a cottage called Little Anchor on the road that leads to Holland House. She's Will and Kate's nearest neighbour, has a very pretty garden. You've probably seen it. I know the one. We commented on it last time we visited Will. Matt nodded. She must be in her early 70s, but still looks pretty tough. She has an air of determination that I rather admire. I hope we can help her, if she opens up to us. Use your charm, my darling. Women are putty in your hands. She grinned at him, fluttering her eyelashes. Resistance is futile where you're concerned. I should know. Strumpet, away with you. How he loved her. They were planning to marry at some point, but felt no need to hurry. They were happy as they were, enjoying their new freedom. They had spent years living for nothing but the police force, juggling shift work, overtime, broken sleep, and missed appointments. It had been a life governed by crime and its perpetrators. This new life was a revelation. Even so, Matt was certain that they had made the right choice in not giving up work entirely. He was determined he was not going to keel over into a newly dug compost heap. Anyway, he was no gardener, unlike Amelia Swain. Thinking of her, his buoyant mood sank. Having her garden shed ransacked, and worse, her precious pet wantonly killed, would have been traumatic for anyone, let alone an older woman living alone. Maybe this was the sort of thing they would become good at. Not solving murders anymore, but making people's lives a little bit better. They would start by helping Mrs. Swain. Chapter 2. The small town of Fenfleet held an outdoor farmers' market every Wednesday. Matt and Liz arrived early and found a parking space that gave a clear view of the bus stop. The local bus meandered around the more outlying villages and hamlets and brought those people that did not drive into the town, returning 2 hours later. There were only 2 buses a day, but the more remote areas the service covered considered themselves very lucky, as some had no public transport at all. Matt and Liz felt they were back on Obbo, and while they waited they reminisced about the long hours they had spent watching and waiting in far less salubrious surroundings than these. Matt spotted Amelia Swain stepping down from the bus. See her? Greying hair, glasses, purple half-jacket, check shirt, black slacks and walking shoes. Got her. Liz stared at the woman. She was upright, well-built, with a weathered skin that spoke of hours spent outdoors. Doesn't look like a shrinking violet, does she? She isn't, said Matt. I understand the lady has been through a lot in her life. Her husband intimated as much when I spoke to him. He was fiercely proud of her. So we let her get her shopping then, intercept her? She watched the woman head directly for a large greengrocer's stand. We'd better follow at a distance and pick up a few bits and pieces to justify being here. Good. I see the cheese man is here today. His Lincolnshire poacher is to die for. Plus, we could do with some fresh veg, so the trip won't be wasted. Liz pulled a list from her pocket. I came prepared. They spent the next 25 minutes wandering from stall to stall, keeping Amelia Swain in view. Finally, Matt announced, "Okay, she looks pretty well laden with bags. Time for my BAFTA-winning performance." "Right, and who are we today? Kenneth Branagh? I see a vague resemblance." "He'll do. Not as good-looking, of course." With a grin, Matt hurried towards the unsuspecting woman. "Well, I'm blowed, it's Mrs. Swain, isn't it?" He turned to Liz. "Liz, this is Will and Kate's neighbour on Whisper Fen." He stopped in front of the surprised woman. "Matt Ballard, Mrs. Swain. I knew your husband, Leonard. Back then I must have been D.S. Ballard. Now I'm a retired DCI." Light dawned. Amelia Swain beamed back. "Of course, that nice police officer who was so helpful to my dear husband. How are you?" "Very well, thank you, Mrs. Swain. This is my partner, Liz. We work together at Fenfleet Police Station." "I'd shake hands, but—" Liz laughed, holding up her shopping bags. "Actually, we're just about to head off home. Can we give you a lift? It's almost on our doorstep, and we're only parked over there." He pointed across the square. "That's very kind," said Amelia. "If it's not too much trouble, that would be wonderful." Liz smiled to herself, hearing the V in wonderful. Amelia might have lived here for the greater part of her life, but she had never lost that accent. Matt took some of her bags, and they made their way to Matt's Toyota Hybrid. After loading everything in the boot, he helped her up into the car. "I hate using the bus," she said, "but my old car is finally kaput. I knew it would happen one day. My husband, he told me so many times that I should get a new car every 3 years. But my Petunia, she was running so well that I kept her longer than he suggested." Amelia shook her head. The passing of Petunia had obviously been a great personal loss. "How long did you have, Petunia, then, Mrs. Swain?" asked Liz. Let me see. We bought her in 1967, brand new, of course. One of the last they produced." After a quick calculation, Liz came to the conclusion that Petunia had had an incredible run for her money. She had to have been well over 50. "What kind of car was she, Mrs. Swain?" asked Matt. "An Austin A40 Farina Mark II in Horizon Blue," Amelia declared proudly, then opened her capacious handbag and rooted around in it. "Of course, I shall get a replacement. You cannot exist out in the Fen villages without wheels. While I was at the market last Wednesday, I also ran into a couple of garages." She extracted 2 brochures and handed one to Liz. "I'm torn between that," she indicated the first, "and this one." Liz found herself staring at the spec sheet for a Lexus ES Saloon. She coughed to hold back a laugh. "Nice cars. My husband always had a Lexus. It was just me that liked my little bit of history. I sold his motor when he died. 1 old lady and 2 cars was a bit extravagant. Do you know anything about this one, Mr. Ballard?" They had pulled up at some lights, and he glanced across at the other brochure. It was for a Ford Mustang Fastback. "That one's a bit glassy for me, I'm afraid. The only Fords we ever drove were police transit vans and a Focus traffic car." Amelia pushed the pamphlets back into her bag and sighed. "Perhaps I should buy, what are they called, a banger?" Liz smiled at her. "If you're used to nice cars and can afford one, why not have one?" A dark look passed over Amelia Swain's face. "I'm not sure now's the right time." She paused. "Mr. Ballard, Liz, you were both police officers, were you not? I can tell you this. Last week I found my cat dead. She had been thrown into my flower bed, the one with the geraniums and the marigolds, just outside the front door." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," Liz said. Perhaps someone ran her over and didn't want to leave her out on the road. Road accidents do not generally leave an animal with a cleanly slit throat, do they, Liz? Are you sure about that? Liz said. Amelia Swain gave her a withering look. And the week before that, my potting shed had the lock snapped off. Was anything taken? Asked Matt. Everything was thrown outside, trampled. A terrible mess, terrible. But I think that nothing was stolen. It was hard to say with all the chaos. Did you report these incidents, Mrs. Swain? Matt asked. What could anybody do about it? Nothing was taken and the cat is dead. Even your wonderful local constabulary cannot perform miracles, can they? Still, you should have told them, Liz said kindly. They could keep an eye on things for a while. I'm sure that they don't have the time or the manpower. There must be plenty worse things than that going on. Amelia was right. But a couple of private investigators might be interested in following it up. Any idea who it might be? I cannot begin to think. I know nearly everyone in Fen and the surrounding villages. There are a few newcomers, but they seem good people. There is old Robert Lenton's son. He is not what my husband would have called quite right in the head, I think. But the poor soul has the mind of a child, and he loves animals. No, I cannot think of anyone. Do you know a man called Gerald Grove? Asked Matt, easing the big car onto the road leading to the villages. A rude and ill-mannered man, certainly. However, I think that he is too intelligent to ransack garden sheds and garrote domestic pets. Where's he from, do you know? Matt asked. He has never opened his mouth to me. It was the postmistress in the village who told me he has some sort of degree or other, you know, letters after his name. And he has a lot of publications sent to him, academic journals and the like. I've been told he looks like a tramp, said Matt. Do not be deceived by his looks, Mr. Ballard. There is a good brain beneath those greasy locks, believe me. Liz decided to chance a suggestion. Mrs. Swain, as Matt said, we are both retired and have time on our hands. We would be more than happy to keep a discreet eye on your lovely cottage for you. If we gave you a card, then if anything should worry you, ring us and we can be with you in 10 minutes. Oh, no, I couldn't be such a nuisance, honestly, Amelia protested. But Liz caught the relief in her eyes. Liz is right, Mrs. Swain, Matt added. Why should some mindless moron get away with it? It's totally unacceptable. We'd be happy to keep our eyes and ears open for anything suspicious. They stopped at her cottage and helped her in with her bags. Liz was full of admiration for the garden. It's my one passion now, said Amelia Swain. I used to have many different hobbies and interests, but now it's just the garden and reading. I do love my books. While we're here, Mrs. Swain, can we take a look at the damage to your shed? Asked Matt. Amelia frowned. If you want. Such a mess. I haven't had the heart to sort it all out yet. She led the way around the back of the cottage and down a neatly trimmed pathway. Approaching the large wooden structure, Liz saw exactly what Mrs. Swain had meant. The lock had been wrenched off, the door itself damaged. The contents had been thrown out, and most of them, it seemed, had been trampled. Amelia had retrieved a few things and taken them back into the shed, but most of it was fit only for the bin. Matt set his jaw, angry. I'll come round tomorrow, Mrs. Swain, and try to fix that door for you, and I'll fit a new lock. We are coming over to have lunch with Will and Kate, so we'll call in afterwards. He held up a hand. And no arguing. I'm no master carpenter, but I can sort that out for you. It's a very good thing you ran into me, Mr. Ballard, and you too, Liz. You are turning into my guardian angels. And it's Matt, please, Mrs. Swain. Then, please call me Amelia. They went back to the car, and Liz handed her their card. Don't take any notice of the private investigator label. We are offering to help simply because we care about what happens out here on the Fens. After all, you are our closest friend's neighbour. Please promise to ring if you're concerned about anything at all. You might not want to call the police, but you can call us any time. After some hesitation, Amelia finally accepted the card, adding, But don't you waste your precious time looking out for me. I'm what my husband called a tough old bird. That was probably true, but Liz had seen the gratitude in her smile. Back in the car, Liz asked whether they should call at Will and Kate's place, as they were only 2 minutes away. Matt said no. If you record, he said Kate's agent and the author of the books that she illustrates will be there today. They won't want us intruding. You're right, she said. I'd forgotten about that. Just seems a shame to be so close and not drop by. We haven't done that in quite a while, and I feel bad about it. When they first moved in, we used to see quite a lot of them. Matt turned the vehicle around, and they made their way back to Tanner's Fen, Liz gazing out of the window. It's a very different landscape here to where we live, even if it is only a few miles away. We're pretty remote, but this place is in another league altogether. Matt nodded. We are that bit further inland into farming country, and our part of the sea bank runs alongside the river. Whisper Fen leads directly onto the marsh, and then the Wash and the North Sea. My gran on my mother's side lived here. In fact, he pointed out of the driver's window. See those two small cottages in that tiny copse close to the marsh lane? Liz saw them. To her they looked sad, lonely, weather-beaten, and in desperate need of some TLC. Don't know who's there now, but she lived there for most of her life, he grunted. Deserved a medal in my book. Cannon Farm, my paternal grandparents' home, was warm and dry and a good place to grow up in, but I'm not sure I would have liked to spend years of my life here. I'm damn sure I wouldn't. Liz gave an involuntary shiver. Although I have to say Mrs. Swain's place is very attractive. Must get lonely being so far out, though she'll probably be mobile again soon, in her new Mustang or her Lexus. He laughed. What a woman, you have to admire her, don't you? I do, but she's still very vulnerable, living alone. Liz could foresee the problems that would accompany advancing years in a remote location. I'm glad Will is not too far up the road. He could be a lifeline as she gets older. Matt sighed. I think our Will is struggling to cope with his own problems, darling, without taking on other people's. I'm sure that's why he wants us on the case. He feels slightly responsible for the old duck, but doesn't have the energy to be on call for her. I wonder how Kate's going to behave tomorrow. Will seemed terribly edgy about her, didn't he? Oh, well, Matt said, not long to wait. And I'm dying to see Will actually cook something. What's the betting it's a pot noodle? Liz elbowed him. I'm sure you'll be utterly amazed. If he cooks at all, that'll be enough for me. They drove back to Tanner's Fen, laughing about times past. There had been some horrific cases, but there had been a lot of fun too. Liz was happy that they were beginning to leave the bad things behind and recall the good times. Life was finally moving on. She rested her hand on his leg. Angela Lazenby, the author of the Fairy Dreams series, and Hubert Price, who was agent to both Kate and Angela, had phoned ahead to say they had been held up but should be there within the hour. Damn and blast! Don't they realise I could be working? I can't sit fannying around waiting for them to get their asses into gear, Kate said. Will didn't even try to stop her tirade. She'd been on edge all morning, constantly telling him what a pain it was, having to put everything on hold for this royal visit. He hadn't liked to remind her that it was she who had insisted they collect the new designs because she didn't want to trail up to London with them. But, sweetheart, he ventured, you've finished this new character now. Why the rush to get back into the studio? Because, she emitted a harsh exhalation, if you must know, I'm sick of Angela's bloody fairies, and I've started a book of my own. Will stared at her, open-mouthed. She had always said she wanted to create something that was not some other author's brainchild, a work for adults, something that was entirely her own making. Well, that's brilliant, but why the secrecy? You always used to show me your work. Kate fiddled with her watch strap. Well, they are a bit different to my usual style. I've been experimenting, and I wanted one finished painting for you to look at. Will gazed at her with interest. Her style had been developing since they moved, and he could hardly wait to see her latest work. So can I see? Give me 3 or 4 days, baby, will you? His face fell. But please. He'd give in, of course, he always did. But he couldn't resist one last try. Then show me this new fairy that Angela and Hubert are collecting. I can't believe you haven't even let me inside the studio while you were designing it. Please let me see it before them. This new habit she had of working behind a closed door caused him considerable pain. For years he had loved to watch his beautiful wife work, but since she'd taken possession of a new studio upstairs, he had not been allowed to enter. She told him her concentration was not as good as it used to be, and she would work better alone. He had had to accept it. For a moment Kate looked irritated, and then she nodded. Of course you can. Come on. She held out her hand and led him up the stairs. Kate opened the door to her studio. It appeared to be empty, apart from a single painting displayed on an easel. The painting depicted a boy fairy standing under a rowan tree. It took Will's breath away. Incredible. Kate, you are getting better and better. The detail in this will be lost on children. It's really beautiful. Kate explained that fairies considered the rowan to be a very special tree, and they always protected the garden in which it grew. It was a witch tree, which meant it belonged to the goddess. There is a spell you can cast to make your bedding plants flourish. We must try it, darling, now we are proper country people. It involves burying old leather boots and shoes along with a handful of rowan berries. You repeat a little charm over them. I've got the words here somewhere. You do it by the light of a waxing moon, either a Friday or a Wednesday, as they are the nights of the guardian angels, Anael and Raphael. Oh, yes, and the berries have to be collected on Rowan Tree Day. That's 13th May. Hate to tell you, honey, but May is long gone. Rats! There go my hopes for winning the village best garden competition. Will looked at her, amazed. In a matter of minutes she had gone from angry and belligerent to his old, enthusiastic Kate, waxing lyrical over her latest creation. How do you find out all this weird stuff? He asked. Research. I read the copy of Angela's story and obviously illustrate that, but the extra detail comes from researching the subject. Like this. Her new fairy is called Runa. That's Norse for a charm, or Sanskrit for magician. I'm not sure which she meant. They both fit the bill. The rowan is greatly revered for its protective qualities. It's meant to ward off harm. That's a bit of luck. We have a splendid one in the back garden. It's a lovely tree. The Welsh planted them in their churchyards, where we used to plant the yew. They're supposed to watch over the spirits of the dead. And this young chap? He pointed to Runa, standing under his rowan tree. He's her new hero for this next book, The Protector of the Magical Garden of Gort. I've a feeling we'll be seeing his face staring at us from quite a few grubby T-shirts next year. Who knows? But he is a handsome little devil, isn't he? They stared at the painting. It was definitely too good for children. It had a magic about it, but it was more than just a pretty picture for kids. The colours were deep and rich, and the attention to detail reminded him of the Millet painting of Ophelia. Runa himself possessed a charisma that shone like a beacon. Who on earth did you model this boy on? He's not a boy, Will. He's a fairy. Okay, but you had to model that face on someone. No, I didn't. It's just how I see Runa. Now it is Runa. I just hope he's everything Angela is hoping for. Kate sounded unsure of herself all at once. I'm certain he is, and a whole lot more besides. Angela will be thrilled when she sees this. It's your best yet. I'm glad you think so, but still, I really am tiring of Angela's fairies. It's this place. Having been here for a while, I now know that I can do much, much better. Will saw a strange, intense light in her eyes that he had never seen before. Well, you were only contracted for one more book. So why not get that out of the way, then take a break and concentrate on your own work? I can't wait that long. She almost spat the words back at him. Don't you understand, Will? I need to be rid of all this. She stared accusingly at her rowan fairy, and for one awful moment Will thought she was going to sweep it from the easel and hurl it to the floor. Then the doorbell rang. Kate closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Oh, shit. Well, we'd better get this over with. Chapter 3. Liz stood in the garden of Cannon Farm and gazed around her. It wasn't picture-postcard pretty, like Amelia's colourful cottage garden, but it was rather beautiful in an overgrown sort of way. The numerous trees and shrubs fought for supremacy, forming a glorious border of thick, mature plants with little or no space between them. Liz rather liked this jungle of variously shaped leaves and colours. Neat and manicured was pretty, but she definitely preferred this natural look. Not exactly the Eden Project, is it? Matt appeared beside her and handed her a mug of tea. I like it, and seeing Amelia's passion for her garden has inspired me to think about how we can make more of this lovely space. She pointed to a corner of the lawn. I can see a summer house over there, can't you? with those lovely trees behind it. And maybe a trellis arch with climbing roses at the bottom of that path. Uh-oh, she's turning into Charlie Dimmock. Liz laughed. Hardly. It's just that there's never been any time for these kinds of thoughts before, has there? It's almost intoxicating. Like you. Matt was gazing down at her. I guess it's time we turned our thoughts back to our new unpaid job before we become, sidetracked. Matt grinned at her lasciviously. Damn. Oh, well, I suppose you're right. They went back into the house and sat down at the kitchen table. I'm really worried about that woman, Liz said flatly. If it had been just one occurrence, like the garden shed, I'd have put it down to some idiot bored kids who'd probably pinched a few cans of Dad's lager and then got stupid. But 2 incidents, both in the same place, in that remote spot, and only a few days apart. No way. Someone's got a grudge against Amelia Swain, don't you think? Matt nodded slowly. Whoever attacked that lock did so with real venom, and her stuff wasn't just thrown around, it was trashed, systematically. So, how are we going to play this, boss? Matt chuckled. That sounds like the old days. We're partners now, remember? I'm not the boss anymore. I'd still like to know what plan of action we are considering. First, I suggest we get on the computer and see exactly what we can find out about Gerald Grove. I think we can afford to take a couple of runs a day out to Whisper Fen, just to keep an eye open. That part of the marsh is a great spot for bird watching, so we can take some binoculars and not look out of place. Sounds like a plan, Liz said. Shall I hit the internet? Perfect. I'll drive down to the big B&Q on the Sultan Le Fen Road and get our Amelia a new lock and some timber to strengthen that shed door. You okay with that? Sure. And it's good to know you're so handy. He stood up, kissing her lightly on the neck. Oh, you have no idea. After Matt had gone, Liz went to her laptop and Googled Gerald Grove. Apart from a lawyer in the United States and a quantity surveyor in County Durham, the only possible Grove was mentioned in an old newspaper article from around 2 years ago. It was from the West Country and referred to someone of that name appearing in court over a breach of the peace. It gave no further details. Liz frowned. Could be him, but she would need to know more about him before she dug deeper. Amelia had said that according to her friend the postmistress, he was educated, possibly an academic. Liz wondered what his subject was. Why would an academic want to live in a tumble-down cottage on the marsh? Maybe he needed seclusion to write some paper or professional article. But why was Will so certain that he'd come across him before, and in his professional capacity? Liz groaned. She was used to accessing the police databases, legally tapping into a wealth of information. Now she was on her own. What had once been a simple request for information was going to be a whole lot more difficult now she was a civilian. What she could not do was ask her old colleagues for help. For a start, the Data Protection Act prevented the sharing of information with the general public. Years ago, a quiet word in a friend's ear could produce a wealth of information, but these days it was more than their job was worth. As registered PIs, she and Matt could legally access all public records, including criminal records and court documents. What they couldn't do was get hold of details of a person's phone, their financial, medical, or sealed court records. No, she'd have to do it the hard way. Get out and talk to people. And of course, she needed to see Grove for herself, to see his face. Matt would be about an hour, but as soon as he was back, she would suggest they go over to Whisper Fen and perhaps do a bit of surveillance. Liz pulled a notebook towards her and wrote the words, "Know your target," and underlined them. She then put down 4 bullet points. Speak to post office, re his academic interest. Try local pub. Check out his cottage and get full address. Try to get a look at him. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She closed the book and stood up. Working independently was going to be a steep learning curve for them, but she was sure that once they found their feet, they would turn out to be damned good private detectives. The late lunch had been a bit of a roller coaster as far as Will was concerned. He found himself constantly watching Kate and listening out for any sudden outbursts. Angela could be a bit of a handful at the best of times, and although Hubert always had Kate's best interests at heart, he was somewhat in awe of the larger-than-life author, and tended to defer to her demands rather too quickly. They managed to survive the cold buffet meal without any disasters, and, as Will had predicted, when Angela saw the painting of Runa, she was stunned by the mastery of Kate's work. The agent, Hubert Price, told Kate that he was certain the publishers would tell her to go ahead immediately with the full set of illustrations for the book. Before she left, the author confided in Will that she felt the move had inspired Kate to higher things. And then she stood in the warm midday sun, stared across the desolate marshes, and shivered. I can see where she would get her inspiration from. This is a wild place indeed. Look at all that sky. She turned away. But not for me, I'm afraid. I find this spot just a little too remote, too lonely. She seemed almost overcome with melancholy. Then she shook herself. I'm so sorry, William. I'm a bit susceptible to atmosphere, and you have quite a lot of it here, don't you? She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Will was greatly relieved to see them depart, but Kate seemed almost elated. She poured them both a glass of wine, and they wandered out into the garden and sat on the bench in the afternoon sunshine. Will told Kate about Angela's reaction to their new location. Oh, I'm not surprised, darling. She is a great writer, but she loves the social whirl, the parties and the hubbub of the city. My wonderful marshes would send her into a depression after a couple of hours. She smiled mischievously. And there isn't an off-licence for 6 miles. That would never do. They giggled like children. I was rather glad to see Hubert take the car keys, considering how much wine Angela put away with lunch. Will laughed, enjoying this rare moment with an uncharacteristically relaxed Kate. So, my clever darling, another deadline ahead. I told you they'd love your illustrations. I've never seen Angela look so in awe. She seemed almost stunned by your interpretation of her character. Yes, it's great, isn't it? Kate nodded, looking suddenly pensive. But there is so much I want to do here. I feel a bit trapped by my work. Then finish this volume and take a break. Take some time out. If you feel like working, then concentrate on your own book. You have plenty of time before that final novel will be ready. Angela admitted that she hadn't even started it yet and was struggling to come up with fresh ideas. He spoke hesitantly. Just recently, the most innocent comments had been misconstrued, causing his moody wife to snap at him. Kate sipped her wine, watching the sunlight glint in the crystal glass. You're right. I'll buckle down and get this one put to bed as soon as possible. I've already done a whole load of preparatory sketches. I'm ahead of the game. Absent-mindedly, she reached across and laid her hand on his leg. Then I'll turn my attention to our home. I want it to be perfect, just as it used to be. Which reminds me, would you mind if I do a bit of research on the history of Holland House? In your spare time, I suppose? He tried not to show it, but he was somewhat surprised that with her deadline for the publisher, her own work, and her wish to revamp an entire house, she would even consider another time-consuming hobby. She smiled and looked out across the salt marsh. So, what do you want to know about the house? He asked after a while. Do you think it has a grim past? Murder, mystery, and mayhem? I sincerely doubt it. It's hardly Medmenham Abbey. Or Borley Rectory, for that matter. I'm interested, that's all. She turned and looked at him. It is our home. Surely you want to know all about it, don't you? I know that it's been in the Holland family since it was built. Old Mr. Holland's grandfather built it as a wedding present for his son and his new wife. And that's enough for me. Don't be boring, Will. You can investigate to your heart's content, my sweet. Just don't start reciting the Holland family tree. I don't want to know who begat who, thank you. In any case, it'd just go in one ear and out the other. That's fine, she murmured, gazing out over Whisper Fen. This is my project. She turned and looked up at Holland House, as if she and this construction of bricks and mortar had an understanding between them. Will wondered when she had last looked at him like that, and experienced a pang of what could only be described as jealousy. Matt and Liz returned from a very profitable sortie to the tiny village of Whisper Fen. Amelia wasn't alone in being friendly with Gladys Conway, the local postmistress. Matt, too, was on first-name terms with her, and they learned a lot about Gerald Grove. They went over what they had learned while preparing supper. So now we know why he spent so much time wandering around the marsh. He's a lepidopterist, an expert on moths and butterflies. Matt lowered 2 pieces of fillet steak into a pan, which soon began to sizzle. And he's studying this area as a hotspot for rare specimens. Liz was rinsing salad leaves under the tap. Maybe Will is wrong about recognizing him from before. He might be a bit of a ragbag, but I can't see him falling foul of the law over a few old moths, can you? Oh, well, Matt shrugged. You know as well as I do that he could still have a murky past or be hiding dirty secrets, even if he is a scholar. True. And it is also true that no one has had a good word to say about him. They'd had a drink in the Silent Coachman, a tiny pub situated midway between Tanner's Fen and Whisper Fen. The landlord, along with a few locals, had been more than happy to share their views on Grove, and hadn't held back. Matt laughed. I'll say. The entire clientele awarded him the prize for rudest man on the Fens. Liz put their dinner plates to warm, and sniffed the delicious aroma of peppered steak, while, in another pan, Matt was cooking mushrooms and tomatoes. Can you check the oven chips, sweetheart? These won't be too long now. Liz looked at the timer. 5 minutes. Perfect. He frowned. I wish we could have got a sighting of the man himself. Me too, she said. I need to have a picture of him in my head. Still, we have his full address now, which will help us with our background check. I must say it's a huge bonus that you know so many people around here. Well, I am a local after all. What are your thoughts on those hostile acts against Amelia? Liz asked. Now you've had time to consider them. Do you think it could possibly be someone with an ancient grudge against Germans? Matt sat down at the kitchen table. I can't see that being the reason. Sure, there's probably 1 or 2 old-timers who still hark back to the war, but why now? Even before Leonard died, the Swains had been living here for donkey's years. Why leave it until now to start hounding her? Liz helped herself to mustard. That's just what I'm asking myself, too. I mean, the war ended in 1945. Supposing while I'm doing my Bob the Builder bit tomorrow, you have a chat with Amelia, Matt said. Maybe she hasn't told us everything yet. And if you recall, Will thought that maybe something else was bothering her. See what you can find out. That's my plan. Leave it to me, boss. Meanwhile, I'm still intrigued about what's going on in Holland House. I hate to see our Will looking so edgy. It's not like him at all. Matt stopped eating. To me, he looked just like he did after they lost their little girl, and when Kate was undergoing treatment. I don't ever want to see them going down that route again. They ate on in silence. Kate had spent the last part of the afternoon up in her studio, but came down for a late supper. When that was finished, they went outside to their vantage point in the garden and sat looking across the salt marsh. The sky was still a soft blue, dotted here and there with islands of grey and peach. On the horizon a dark band of night cloud moved slowly across the sky, like a flagship heralding the close of day. This is the best time of all, whispered Kate, and started to hum a haunting tune. Will recognized it as one he often heard coming from her studio late at night while she worked. Will put his arm around her and held her tightly. Rather apt, don't you think? In a soft, surprisingly melodious voice, he sang the familiar lyrics. They told of 2 people, comfortable in each other's company, looking forward to spending the rest of their lives together, no matter what life threw at them. He stopped, unsure of the next words. Kate took up the song until he silenced her with a kiss. No more. I seem to think the next bit is sad. Isn't it about something parting them? That's never going to happen. Never, she echoed. As a moving-in present, Matt and Liz had given them a wonderful old watercolour depicting a cottage and a mill at sunset on the edge of the marsh. The title was Dying Light, and it hung in pride of place above the fireplace in the lounge. Gazing at the evening sky, Will was reminded of the painting. They touched their glasses together. Will, Kate asked, do you really like it here? Her question surprised him. Yes, of course I do. Why? Do I give the impression of not liking it? No, she said softly. It's just that I love it so much I'd hate for us to move on again. My darling, after all the hard work we've been putting in, they'll have to carry me out in a wooden box before I uproot from here. Angela worried me rather. All that talk of too much solitude. I hoped that she hadn't put you off the house. Will laughed. Nothing Angela Lazenby could say about it would influence me in the slightest. She took his hand. And you don't miss the force too badly? You haven't given me a chance. I work harder now than I ever did at the Nick. And it seems you have a lot more in mind. Kate was silent for several minutes. I'll be doing a lot of the work on the interior myself, Will. Wallpapering and painting and the like. It has to be. She seemed to drift off into her own thoughts for a moment. Exactly right. He held back his quip about her lack of faith in his workmanship and returned to her question about leaving the force. As to my early retirement, no. I really truly enjoy spending all my days with the one I love. All those scroats and drunks. I can't say I miss them at all, thank you. He was lying, and she probably knew it, but it sounded as if he meant it. The mention of scroats brought him round to Gerald Grove. Kate spent hours wandering the sea bank, as did that unsavoury character. Kate, there's a man who walks the marsh a lot. He's called Grove. Should you see him, please steer clear. He's not the nicest man in the world. Oh, you mean Gerald? He's no trouble. Will took a breath and held it. You know him? I've spoken to him a few times. He's studying the wildlife in the area, mainly butterflies and insects. He's quite interesting. This didn't sound anything like the man Amelia had mentioned. She had described him as unbelievably rude, an opinion endorsed by Amelia's friend in the post office. So why was Grove chatting pleasantly with his wife? He really bothers me, sweetheart. I'd appreciate it if you kept your distance. Kate pulled a face, but promised to give him a wide berth in future, adding that in any case he did smell rather. Will reminded himself to mention it to Matt and Liz. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, Will awoke to see the dark shadow of his wife slipping silently out of the bedroom. Moments later he saw the light go on in her studio and heard her sorting through her painting materials. He was tempted to go in, ask her if she would like a hot drink or something, but fearing her reaction, decided to let her be. He moved over to her side of the bed and breathed in her special flowery smell. He'd never been able to tell what it was, a mixture of flowers, sea breezes and washing that had been hung out to dry. It was uniquely hers. He began to drift off to sleep, trying, as he had so many times before, to name the flower that she reminded him of. Lily of the valley? Roses or sweet peas? Was it lilacs? He woke up at first light, as Kate slipped in beside him, and immediately fell into a deep slumber. Chapter 4. On arriving at Holland House, Liz and Matt stood outside for a few moments, taking in the old building and the vista across the fen. Not having been here for a few months, they noticed at once how much work had been done outside. For years during the residence of old Lady Holland, the garden, greenhouse and outbuildings had all been neglected. Now Will was doing a heroic job, considering his injuries, in restoring them to their original order. "Hey, you two, how are you doing?" Will hurried out to join them. Matt noted that Kate wasn't with him. "We're fine, Will, thank you. Lovely day again." "You've done a really good job here," Liz said admiringly. "I hadn't realized you had a proper wishing well. It's beautiful." "Seems odd, but that's one of the reasons why this place was so reasonable." Will went over to it and laid a hand on the rim. "Did I tell you about the clause Mrs. Holland put into the conditions of purchase?" Matt shook his head. "No, I don't think you mentioned any clause." "Did you ever meet Mrs. Holland, Matt?" "Oh, yes, she lived here all the time I was growing up. I remember a strange old lady with pursed lips and beady eyes. We kids stayed well away from this place. Even when she was younger, she was a right tyrant if she caught any of us hanging around. She really did not like children. We called her a witch and invented all sorts of scary stories about her. So you won't be surprised when I tell you what she built into the sale agreement." He slapped the brickwork. "I had to try not to laugh when the estate agent read it out. I really wondered if the old girl was the full ticket. The clause stated that she would not sell to her family. According to her, the house was not suitable for children, and the prospective buyer must be either retired or permanently childless. He stopped. Matt and Liz were aware that after her breakdown, Kate and Will had been told that she was in too fragile a condition to even consider adoption. They had been advised to put all thought of having children out of their minds forever. We signed and got a ridiculously good deal. Will spread out his arms. All this for the price of a small 3-bed new build on an estate. No-brainer. Liz wrinkled her brow. I wonder why she felt so strongly about children. Officially, she considered it dangerous for kids, with the old well, the ancient outbuildings, and the treacherous tides that could sweep across the marsh. In truth, and please keep this to yourself because Kate is unaware of the fact, it probably originated from the fact that her 2-year-old daughter had been lost on the marsh. Apparently, one minute the child was playing in the garden, and the next she was gone. The papers were full of it. People suspected murder, abduction, all sorts of theories. But it was almost certain that she got lost and swept away in the tide. Do you remember it, Matt? Of course. Well, not personally. I was too young at the time, but I remember my dad saying there were search parties out all over the area looking for a missing little one. I'd forgotten that it was Mrs. Holland's child. And Kate is unaware of this. Liz looked concerned. How do you think she would react if she did know? Will raised his eyebrows. Probably very badly. He looked anxious. Mind you, I think she'll find out soon enough. She's started researching the place, and she's bound to dig that one up. Where is she? Matt asked tentatively. Working? Actually, she worked for most of the night. I left her sleeping this morning, but she said she'll be down for lunch. He shrugged. Well, I hope she will, but no promises. She wants to finish her current book as quickly as possible, then spend time redecorating the house. They went inside. Matt sniffed the air. Hey, what's that? It smells delicious. Spicy chicken and avocado and a tortilla wrap. It's nothing special, but it's one of Kate's favourites. 10 minutes and we're there. Matt felt Liz elbow him in the ribs. Knocks spots off a pot noodle. Will looked at them blankly. Matt laughed. Private joke. Will poured Liz a glass of wine. I'll go and give Kate a call. I hope she hasn't gone back to sleep. While he was out of the room, Liz gave Matt a long look. He's making a big effort, but he's still edgy as hell. Matt nodded. If only Will would drop the pretense and tell them everything that was worrying him, no matter how harrowing. A few minutes later, Kate came in. Matt was shocked at her appearance. In just 2 months, she had lost weight and looked almost gaunt. She was very pale, as if she lived in the dark. She gave them both a hug and said how good it was to see them again. But there was something not right about Kate Stonebridge. The food was as tasty as it smelt, and Matt took delight in ribbing his old friend about his metamorphosis into Jamie Oliver. Meanwhile, considering it was supposedly her favourite lunch, Kate ate almost nothing. Liz tried to draw her out about the illustrations she was working on, but Kate brushed her questions aside. All she wanted to talk about was Holland House and Whisper Fen. As soon as they had finished, Kate jumped up. Liz, could you come and give me some of your thoughts on wallpaper for the dining room? I've got heaps of pattern books, but it's not easy to find one that fits this house. Matt took advantage of their absence to tell Will about their meeting with Amelia Swain. We are calling in after we leave here to fix the lock on her shed. While I'm busy with that, Liz is going to try to find out what else is worrying her. He lowered his voice. We're well in with her, I think. I reckon she's relieved to have someone to talk to. Why don't you ring me later and I'll update you? Will said he would. Kate really loves this house, doesn't she? Matt said. Will nodded unenthusiastically. Is she okay, Will? Only she's lost a lot of weight since we saw her last. She's overdoing it, mate. Will kept his voice low. She's working all hours and sometimes well into the night. She's desperate to finish this book for her publisher. She's working on new paintings of her own, and then there's the house, which seems to be becoming something of an obsession. He ran a hand through his hair. I want it to look good too, of course, but Liz is dead set on it being exactly as it was when Mrs. Holland first married. She's sourced wallpaper designs from the 30s, researched paint colours, and had them specially mixed. She's even tracked down some authentic fabric for drapes. Hell, Matt, by the time she's finished, I'll be living in a museum. Matt had recalled Liz telling him his home was a museum, then had made it into the lovely place it was now. It seemed that Kate wanted to do the exact opposite. Don't you have any say in it, Will? After all, it's your home too. Will laughed. Sometimes I wonder. Oh, I don't mean that. It's just that she's become so fixated on her idea of Holland House that I don't really feature. She thinks that because I love the property, I'll love what she does with it. End of. He sighed. And she wanders off all over the marsh and the sea bank. She says she's looking for inspiration for her work. Sometimes she's gone for hours. And she's worrying you sick. Before Will could answer, they heard Kate and Liz coming back. Will went off to make coffee. They stayed for another hour or so until Matt sensed that Kate was growing restless. I think we should make a move, guys. It's been really lovely seeing you both again. You must come over to us next week. It's our turn to cook. A slight look of irritation passed across Kate's face, but Matt chose to ignore it. Yes, added Liz, although I'm not sure we're up to the standard of master chef here. She grinned at Will. We'd love to, said Kate with a wide, forced smile. We certainly mustn't leave it so long next time. As Matt and Liz drove down the lane to Amelia Swain's cottage, Liz let out a long, low whistle. Oh, my. She said nothing further. She didn't need to. Will had just started clearing the dishes and stacking the dishwasher when he saw Kate sitting at the table with a large glass of wine, staring at a wallpaper sample. I thought you didn't want a drink, honey, he said affably, or I'd have poured you one. She stared at him coldly. I changed my mind. There's no law against that, is there? Of course not, he said carefully. What's the matter, Kate? You really don't get it, do you? Why on earth did you invite them round? You know how much I have to do, but you make me waste all this time. Will was dumbstruck. Oh, don't stand there with your mouth open, for heaven's sake. I just don't have time for people and idle chit-chat right now. I thought you would have realised that. And anyway, sure, they were very helpful when we moved in, but they aren't really my kind of people. Will suddenly found his voice. What on earth do you mean by that? We've spent more time with Matt and Liz than anybody. Hell, you've spent enough hours with Liz in the past, drinking her wine and having girly days out. They've been damn good friends to us. Kate, her back rigid, stared unblinkingly at the heavy book of wallpaper patterns. Oh, don't make a song and dance about it, Will. I only said that I wasn't that keen on them. I don't have to like all your friends, do I? Now, what do you think of this stripe for the hall and stairs? Will turned his back on his wife, stormed out of the house, and went to the woodshed. Kate came by 20 minutes later. He was still hurling the axe into the big round logs, reducing them to kindling, and himself to a sweating, gasping mess. He knew she was there, but he refused to acknowledge her presence immediately. After a while he let the axe fall and looked at his wife with hurt in his eyes. I'm sorry my friends aren't good enough for you. You never said as much before, so I really wasn't to know, was I? Will, I'm so sorry. I don't know what got into me. There's nothing wrong with Matt and Liz. I love them, really I do. It's me. I'm stressed and really overtired, I suppose. Forgive me? She ran to him and held him close, running her fingers through his wet hair. Will said nothing. I panicked. She paused while he wondered why. I could see us getting into a round of social gatherings again, out for dinner one night, lunch another day. I simply can't handle trying to talk to people, pretending to enjoy myself when I just want to be here, making the house special again, and working in the studio. I have to finish Angela's bloody fairies. I need to be rid of them and their damned magical garden of Gort. Then, and only then, can I do some real work. He realized that she was crying. Still seething with anger and hurt, he said, Shh, it's okay, sweetheart. But you can't go on like this, you know. You have to slow down. This isn't you. And you know as well as I do that Angela's bloody fairies have made you, us, a lot of money. You've always loved doing them, so why this change of heart? Because I resent them. They're taking up my precious time. I just want this assignment to be over so I can get on with what I really want to do. she sniffed. I don't mean to be so horrid to you, but I can't stop myself. I just seem to get so angry. You need sleep, Kate. A whole lot of it. He released her grip, held her away from him, and stared at her. You are exhausted. If you don't recharge your batteries, you will crash, and then there will be no work done at all. Now, I'm going to get a shower, and if you want to go to your studio, fine, but no late nights, understand? And then tomorrow we'll try to work out some sort of routine, one that won't kill you. She nodded, squeezed his hand, and murmured that she was sorry. Will hung the axe up on its hook, realizing that he had done his injured elbow no favours by attacking half the wood store in a frenzy. Now it was killing him. He trudged back to the house to find painkillers, get a hot shower, and continue worrying about Kate. While Matt sawed wood for the repairs to the shed door, Liz and Amelia sat in the cottage kitchen. I couldn't sleep last night, Liz. I lay awake and came to the conclusion that since you are so kind as to take an interest in me, I really should tell you everything, Amelia said. Liz could have punched the air. There have been more things, she asked. Amelia went to a kitchen drawer, took out an envelope and passed it to Liz. Look inside. Liz opened the envelope and removed a single sheet of white paper. On it, in black marker pen, were the words, "You are not safe here." Liz swallowed. This was a real threat. It took the whole thing to a different level. When did you get this? She asked. The day before I found my beautiful Heidi dead. Amelia hung her head. It was like they killed her to make sure I understood that they were serious. You really should have gone to the police, Amelia. You must be terrified out here on your own. Liz didn't mean to frighten her, but she had to appreciate that this was no gang of bored kids. Someone intended her real harm. I'm not frightened, Liz, but I'm very angry. Amelia sat down in a chair opposite her. I have experienced far worse than this, believe me, as I am Jewish and my family came from Germany. She shrugged. You can imagine, can't you? Even though I'm married an Englishman, my life has not been a bed of roses, I assure you. This makes me livid. I have done nothing to upset anyone. I do not deserve this. Is there anyone you can stay with, just for a while? Liz asked. I will not leave my home. For one thing, they would have free rein to do as they pleased, and for another, I refuse to let them think they have won. Amelia set her jaw, and Liz realized that there would be no arguing with her. Then would you mind if I tell one of my old colleagues at Fenfleet Police Station? As you said before, it's unlikely they can do much to help, but they really should know about this. Maybe the occasional visit out here in a marked car might deter whoever is threatening you. I'd rather you didn't. Amelia shrugged again. I cannot think why anyone would want to do this to me. It doesn't make sense. Liz agreed. When I was in the police, I came across cases of unscrupulous property developers putting the frighteners on people who refused to sell them their homes or land. But let's face it, no one would want to build out here on the marsh edge. She rubbed her chin thoughtfully. No one has made you an offer for your property, have they? Never. As you said, it's not in a particularly desirable area. Yes, it's beautiful in its way, and I love it. But people want amenities, regular transport, shops, schools. We have nothing here other than a tiny post office come village store, and a pub a mile and a half away. Some people would love it for that very reason. Liz looked around. It's a beautiful home and a spectacular garden, Amelia, and there are people who really do want peace and quiet. I'd hate to have a school and pub next door to my home. But there have been no offers from anyone, I promise you. Amelia sighed. Now I'm wondering what they have in mind for their next little assault. Liz didn't want to start speculating. We'll show this to Matt as soon as he's finished doing a Tommy Walsh in the garden. She pointed to the note, the police officer in her observing that the envelope was plain and obviously hand-delivered, and was of the self-seal variety that did not require licking the flap down. May we keep it, Amelia? With my blessing, it will be a relief to have it out of my home. Amelia straightened up. Now I think it's time your lovely partner had some tea. She went to the fridge for milk and added, Actually, I do have to go away quite soon. I have a yearly meeting with my accountant, who is based in London. We are old friends, so I generally go up on a Friday night, stay over, and travel back the following Monday morning. The thing is, I'm picking up my new car on Thursday, and I dread leaving it here unprotected while I am away. Then why not leave it with us? We're only a few miles away. Liz volunteered. What car did you choose, Amelia? A Volvo V60 Estate. It was love at first sight, and it's not as ostentatious as the Lexus or one of those super Mustangs. Liz's concern escalated. A brand new car would be a bloody great magnet for anyone wanting to cause Amelia distress. Then you really must bring it to Tanner's Fen, and while you are here, lock the garage every night without fail. Oh, I will. My timing isn't exactly flawless, is it? Amelia said ruefully. But living here I have to have a reliable vehicle. Maybe that banger would not have been such a bad idea after all. A sparkling new Volvo and a person with mischief on their mind didn't mix too well in Liz's book. Of course you must. Meanwhile, we really do need to find out who is doing this and stop them, Amelia, so if you see either of us or our car hanging around, don't concern yourself. We'll be keeping a close eye on you from now on. For a moment she thought the tough old bird might give way to tears, but Amelia took a deep breath. You're very kind, both of you. Taking that as an assent to their unofficial investigation, Liz smiled at her. Let's go and tell Bob the Builder that he's earned himself a cup of tea, and that we're upping our game. Chapter 5. Will and Kate's argument on the day of Matt and Liz's visit had left a shadow hanging over them. It would take them some time to get over it. For now they maintained an uneasy truce. Kate spent a lot of time behind the closed door of her studio, but at least she made the effort to join Will for meals and to eat more regularly. Will soldiered on with his renovations while Kate, when not painting, spent the rest of her time walking the marshes, or planning and researching her project for the renovation of Holland House. She seemed to have become stronger, and even helped with the design aspects of the garden. The following weekend was humid and stormy. But despite this, Kate seemed almost restored to her old self. Will began to relax again. Perhaps the worst had passed. Initially, they took great delight in watching the jagged forks of lightning zigzagging down into the wash. But after a while, the constant storms became tedious, and now Kate was becoming unsettled and irritable again. She had begun revamping the kitchen and was at the same time trying to oversee his efforts at restoring the Victorian greenhouse and get parts of the garden back under control. Damn and blast, bloody weather! Another hour and I could have finished that bed around the well. Kate flopped down on a kitchen chair and rubbed her hair angrily with a hand towel. There is always tomorrow, sweetheart. Don't forget what we said about not pushing yourself too hard. Anyone would think our time here was limited. We have all the time in the world, remember? Busy with the tea, Will missed the look of annoyance that she threw his way. Have you fixed those windows yet, Will? I thought you said the fan lights were almost done. That greenhouse is a nightmare, Kate. Every time I fix one thing, something else falls to bits. I've practically had to rebuild those frames. They're all rotten. Kate's tone was tetchy. Well, it needs to be weatherproof for the winter. I'm hoping to get some seedlings in before the frosts start. It's not a simple job, Kate. Trying to rehang window frames with a dodgy arm is not exactly easy, you know. He tried to keep his tone even, but he had been doing his best, and it rankled that it wasn't appreciated. But if you're not up to it, then I'll get someone in. I never said I wouldn't finish it, did I? I meant don't push me. It's not a simple job. He went silent. Kate, apparently realizing that she had been, in his words, out of order, took the mug of tea from him and ruffled his hair. Sorry, Bear. He smiled. She hadn't used his pet name for ages. When they first met, on a fun run to raise money for a local children's hospice, he had been dressed as a teddy bear. He had nearly expired beneath the heavy costume, and Kate had given him a cold drink. He became her bear from that day forth. I know, I'm being a total pain in the bum. She sat down again and looked at him. I just want everything right, and there just don't seem to be enough hours in the day. Is it the book? Are you behind with the illustrations? He asked tentatively. No, in fact, because I'd done so many sketches and because they want to use my original paintings as the plates. I'm not ahead with Angela's bloody book. She gave him an apologetic grin. I know I promised to slow down, but I want the damn thing finished, so I have been pushing it a bit. She paused. I've also told Hubert I need a break before the next one, and joy of joys, he reckons Angela's nowhere near ready yet. If she's got writer's block, that's fine with me. Long may it last. Will looked anxiously at his wife. She was suddenly edgy and bad-tempered, Mardy-faced, as his mum would have said. He feared that she was going to slip back into her unpredictable frame of mind again, where he no longer recognised his lovely wife. Actually, talking about getting someone in to help us. Kate's voice was suddenly soft and back to normal. I want to have a word with the builders' merchants just outside town about some more gravel for the side entrance to the garage. And I was thinking of getting some of those circular paving stones for the patio. The concrete is breaking up badly. One of us will fracture an ankle before long. Will groaned. That sounds like pretty hard and heavy work for me and my wonky arm. I have no intention of letting you do the patio, Bear. I thought I'd see if one of the workmen at the builder's yard might like to earn himself a few pounds. The old rubble would have to be taken up and carted away before the new stones could be laid, and your arm wouldn't stand up to it. Hopefully I should be receiving a nice fat cheque in the post soon, so we'll let someone else get a hernia, if that's all right with you. I'll say it is. If you're okay about spending the cash, let's save me and my arm for more meaningful tasks. He was relieved, but also concerned about some cowboy turning up and charging them a fortune for a crap job. However, this wasn't the time to mention it. Her good mood seemed to have returned, and he wanted it to continue. He smiled. Let's take the rest of the day off. It's still early. We can go and see your builder's merchant, then, if the weather clears, drive up to Gibraltar Point for a walk in the sea air. Or what about lunch in Stamford, nose around the shops, then on to Rutland Water? She didn't answer him. OK, then what about a wander around some garden centres, get some of the plants you want for the garden, then go on to Skeggy? I'll buy you a candy floss if you're good. A smile slowly crept across her face. And a plate of cockles? Deal. The day out did them both good, and by nightfall they were relaxed and happy. Kate seemed to have left behind her mission to be rid of Angela's fairies, and had got some of her project into a better perspective. She had spoken to someone at the builder's yard who had said he would call the following morning. Will found some citronella candles, and they took them out to the garden. They sat together on the seat overlooking Whisper Fen, beneath a sky filled with a million stars, sipping glasses of Sancerre. All the recent worries and tantrums seemed to have slipped away, leaving them peaceful and at ease. "This is beautiful," Kate breathed softly. "I wonder if old Mrs. Holland used to sit out here and watch the night sky over the marshes. I bet she misses all this now she's in a nursing home." Will looked doubtful. It was her home all her life, but I don't suppose she had much love for the marshes. As soon as he'd uttered them, he regretted his words. Why, to have lived here all that time, surely you'd have to love it. A tiny stream of disquiet trickled between his shoulder blades. He hadn't intended to mention the missing child. "I heard there was a bit of a family tragedy years ago." He glanced towards the fen. "Someone got lost out there." "You never said. How come I don't know about it?" "Come on, you tight-lipped copper, spill the beans." Her tone was still light, however. Will knew that the story would come out sometime, so maybe it was best that it came from him. He told her what he knew about the child who had gone missing. She stared into her glass, watching the candlelight glimmer in the pale, sparkling liquid, and said quietly, "So her daughter died out there. No wonder the old lady didn't want children around." "She disappeared, Kate. There is a difference. They never found her. It is supposition that she died. All that rigmarole about the well and the dangerous outbuildings was a cover. Her real worry was the fen." "I should think so." "Whatever, she was right. This place isn't suitable for children. In fact, I don't think Holland House likes children at all." Will was well aware of how sensitive Kate was, but her words caused him to shiver. How could a house, mere bricks and mortar, have feelings? He was a down-to-earth plod, and such fancies were beyond his comprehension. He admired her fairy paintings, but to him they were nothing more than play. He changed the subject quickly. Sometimes her odd fancies gave him the creeps. "Have you seen that weird guy Grove again? You know, the stinky bloke that lives in that ramshackle old cottage down by the sluice?" She raised an eyebrow, evidently amused at his too obvious change of tack. "Once, although I hadn't meant to after you warned me about him." She looked at him inquiringly. "Are you sure you're right about him, Will? Sure, he's not very chatty, but he does love the marsh. And there's nothing he doesn't know about all the birds that pass through here, even though he doesn't come from this area." Though annoyed that she had ignored his warning, Will was loath to spoil their peaceful evening. "You found out quite a bit from someone who doesn't say much. I could have done with you as my snout when I was working." They fell into a companionable silence. After a while, Will asked Kate to point out some of the constellations to him. He could never remember them. He enjoyed his beautiful wife's enthusiasm as she pointed them out. "There's Cassiopeia. See that W shape to the left of the cottage chimney? And that's Orion the hunter, with his belt and sword. That really bright star in the belt is Rigel. It's a blue-white supergiant. The other slightly less bright one is Betelgeuse. That's a red supergiant." As she continued to point out her favourites, telling him their names and their impossible sizes and distances from Earth, his eyelids began to droop. "I love you," he said. "You're my brightest star, brighter than all of these." "Thank you, my bear. I love you too." The night wind sent a cooling breath over their naked bodies. They lay on top of the bed, entwined. As he drifted down into sleep, Will heard her ask, "Do you think she had any other children, or just the one who died?" Not wanting to answer, he pretended to fall asleep. Real sleep following soon after. The following morning Will rolled over and reached for her, only to find a cold, empty space beside him. He struggled up against the pillows and tried to massage a bit of life back into his aching right arm. He peered at the clock radio, whose green digital numbers proclaimed it to be 6:35, so he flopped back down again. For the whole of the previous week, Kate had adhered to their new regime. They enjoyed a morning snuggle at around 7 o'clock. Then they made tea and drank it in bed, planning the day ahead before they got up and showered. Today, though, she was back in her studio, and more than likely trying to make up for lost time. Out in the garden, Will had been working for an hour or so when he heard the growl of an engine. He put down his hammer and saw an old, battered white lorry pull up a few yards from their drive. His eyes narrowed. Everything about the vehicle shouted cowboy. It might just as well have been a covered wagon. Will was relieved not to have gone out this morning. This was not the first time he had had to save his wife from being ripped off. He set off down the garden, but Kate was already coming out of the front door. "So glad you made it," she exclaimed happily. She turned to Will and called out, "This is Barry, darling." The young man extended a hand and bestowed a friendly smile on Will. "Pleased to meet you, sir. Nice house you have here. Your wife said you've not been here long." His accent declared him to be a Fens man, and he had a surprisingly pleasant voice. "Yes, we lived in Fenfleet before," Will said. They went around to the back of the house. "So, Barry, what do you think of our dilapidated patio, then?" he asked. "Shouldn't be too difficult to get it up, sir. It's pretty crumbly to start with. We get a skip in to take away the hardcore, but use a bit of it for the base of the new patio. That'd keep the cost down." He looked at Kate. "Yesterday you said you wanted the job done ASAP, Mrs. Stonebridge. Well, we really are booked up for at least the next 2 months." Kate's face fell. "But," he continued, "if the estimate is acceptable and you wouldn't mind a lot of noise pretty early in the morning, we could start tomorrow. Thing is, I'd booked a couple of extra chaps for a big landscaping contract over Wainfleet way. But there's a 2-week hold-up on it, so rather than put them off—" "Excellent, we don't mind at all, do we, darling?" She left no room for Will to reply. Kate was in full flow. "That's perfect. Well, we'll let you get on with the estimate. When you need to send it to us, could you just tell us so as to save time?" Will took her gently by the arm and led her towards the house. Barry will want to check the price of materials, sweetheart. Let's leave him to it and not rush him, shall we?" The young man nodded and began taking measurements. Back in the house, Kate was buzzing with excitement. "Wow, what luck that they have a cancellation." "Babe," Will said, "they probably always have a cancellation. It's how they work. Cynic. I'm just pleased that they can start so soon." "You haven't even seen the quote yet. Perhaps we should get more than one. Don't get ahead of yourself." He had hardly got the words out when Kate turned on him. "I want that work done, and I want it done soon. If the estimate is even halfway fair, I'm going to let them start tomorrow morning." "What the hell has got into you, Kate? We used to discuss things. Now all the decisions seem to be made between you and the bloody house. What about me? What on earth is all the hurry for?" "Because it needs doing, and if I wait for you, we'll still be dithering around at Christmas." "Kate!" "We're arguing again. We never argued before we came here." His voice trembled and tears welled up in his eyes. "Oh, right, you're going to blame the house for everything that goes wrong, are you?" "If I think it's to blame, then yes," he said. "Well, I suggest you don't." She spat the words at him. "It has nothing to do with the house." "Then what is it?" She stuttered, searching for words. It's... oh!" She ran from the room. He heard her steps on the stairs and a door slammed. Once again she was in her studio. He pictured her sitting on the window seat looking out over Whisper Fen. He desperately wanted to go to her, to hold her close. He wanted to bury his face in her sweet-smelling hair and breathe her fresh, clean scent. He wanted things to be as they had been before they came to this beautiful, lonely place. He held his head in his hands. A voice from the back garden called his name. He swallowed hard and went out to Barry. "Thank you for giving me a bit of breathing space, sir. I do need to price this up properly back at the office. Your wife is really keen to get it done yesterday, isn't she?" Will managed a forced laugh. "You do what you have to do. Don't let her rush you. I'll get it done by 4 and give you a ring if I may. These chaps I've got on hold, they'll be wanting to know. Must be pretty grim not knowing if you've got money coming in or not." Will nodded. The guy actually seemed honest. "I know I sound like my wife, but any rough idea on a price? I promise not to hold you to it." The man rubbed his chin. "Off the top of my head, somewhere in the region of $1,000, say 1,200 tops. I get the materials at trade price, and I'll pass that on to you." Will remembered one of his mates at the station paying far more than that for a patio area the year before. A skip alone cost over £100. "Look, if the estimate comes out near that figure, you can go ahead. My wife seems to have set her heart on getting this done. If it's a lot more, perhaps we may have to think again, but it shouldn't be more, Mr. Stonebridge. That was my outside cost, but I'll ring you later." He glanced at his watch. "God, I have to go. The lorry's my uncle's. My own truck is in dark, and I've pinched his vehicle for the morning. He'll kill me if he don't have it back by dinner time. Thank you for the possible business. I'll ring you later." Watching the old lorry disappear in a cloud of dust, Will stood wondering what to do. He looked up at Kate's window, but there was no one there. He went inside, climbed the stairs, and stood outside her room. He called her name softly, hesitantly. She bade him come in. Her back was to him, and she was frantically sketching. As he approached her, she closed her pad and turned to him, wearing a strange smile. "Hello, Bear. What do you fancy for dinner tonight? I'll cook." Liz threw down her pen and looked at Matt. "Joe Grove does have a skeleton in his cupboard, I knew it." When they weren't watching over Amelia Swain, they had spent the past week making covert inquiries into the man that Will had found so troubling. Now, after exchanging countless emails with the West Country, Liz had finally found what she'd been looking for. He was involved in an investigation regarding a boy of 9 who was abducted. She read from the printout that was just coming through. Grove lived in a village on Exmoor, and he fell under suspicion because he'd been in a spot of trouble a while before this case. It was peeping Tom activities. Nothing he could be nicked for, but because of it, he was questioned on suspicion of abducting the lad. Matt whistled. "So, our Will's copper's nose was spot on. Well, even if he was innocent, and no one seems to think he was, as a peeping Tom, he's certainly not Snow White." She referred to the printout. "The boy turned up alive and unharmed. He said he'd got lost on the moor, spent a couple of days in an old barn. He also swore that Grove had nothing to do with it. But a badge that the kid always wore was found in Grove's cottage. Grove said children were always calling in so he could identify butterflies and moths they found, and he could have dropped it on one of those visits. As the boy denied having been abducted, there was nothing to hold Grove for, and there was no charge to answer. But the detectives on the case were certain that the kid had not been holed up in any barn. They also thought Grove was lying through his teeth. "How did you get hold of all this?" Matt asked. "I found a journalist who had been following the police inquiry into the missing boy. Nice bloke, very helpful. He coughed it all up on the understanding that if Grove steps out of line down here, I give him the lowdown." Liz grinned. "I'd be very pleased to do that should Grove turn naughty on us." "But so far he hasn't done anything on this patch, or as far as we can ascertain," Matt said thoughtfully. "Apart from being rude to everyone, nothing. Everyone except for Kate Stonebridge, according to Will." Matt sat down and crossed his legs. "Will said she met him while she was walking up on the sea bank. She said he was perfectly fine with her and told her about the wildlife and the birds." Liz wrinkled her brow. "That's worrying. I hope Will told her to steer well clear. In no uncertain terms, apparently. Kate said she would, mainly because the man smelt." He rolled his eyes in disgust. "At least we've seen him for ourselves now, thanks to our little snout the postmistress letting us know when he collected his magazines from her. I can't wait to tell Will what you've dug up. And tell him to make sure Kate understands that Grove is not to be trusted." Liz sat back. "Any luck with talking Amelia into getting a surveillance camera installed at Little Anchor?" Matt shook his head. "She still says it reminds her of bad times, and the stories her parents told her of being watched and spied on. I can't push her too hard. We don't know what she's been through in the past, but I won't give up trying." "Shame," said Liz. "I know whoever it is has gone quiet, but I'm sure they haven't finished with our Amelia yet." Matt nodded. He felt the same. The question was, what had they in mind for the next time? Chapter 6. The week had been a series of ups and downs for Will and Kate. In the main she had been a bit calmer. Barry and his workers had started work on the patio, and as it turned out, he proved to be the exception to the rule. Will was obliged to admit that he and his workers had done an excellent job for a very reasonable price. So much so that as Barry's next job had been held up yet again, they had begun clearing an overgrown area at the back of the well, with a view to constructing a series of small terraces and a pond. It was actually quite reassuring to see them working outside. Having them there made the place feel kind of normal, and they were certainly working far faster than him. Even better, it clearly pleased Kate. Even so, despite the good days, Kate oscillated between being the loving woman he had married and a preoccupied, impatient and bad-tempered stranger. Her mood swings left him tired, unhappy and unable to sleep. Kate's sleep patterns had altered too. More often than not, she would rise in the dead of night and spend hours in her studio, and she never volunteered to show her husband the fruits of her labours. Once, after constant requests from him, she produced a finished image. It was powerful and cleverly painted, but it lacked the fine detail that normally characterized her work. It was shadowy and somehow frightening. It showed some kind of underground dweller, a troll-like being crouched at the entrance to his cavern and looking out suspiciously. He was depicted slightly turned to one side so that you saw his deformed back. Outside the cave, like a window looking into the light, was a mountain meadow. That was sunlit and colourful, but it only occupied a small portion of the painting. It seemed to Will as if this glimpse of a meadow was the only part of the picture that Kate had painted, the rest being the work of someone else. That other artist was undoubtedly brilliant, but sinister. She refused to show him anything else, which made him wonder anxiously what the other paintings might be like. Will longed to talk to Matt and Liz about Kate, but he felt that this would be a betrayal. He was sure she was deeply depressed. He recalled the breakdown she had suffered following the loss of their child. It was some time ago now, but still she found it impossible to talk about the baby. Little Emma Stonebridge had lived for one day. Kate had hemorrhaged so badly after the birth that they thought they would lose her too. but she survived, coming out of it minus her torn and damaged womb. The shock of losing Emma before she could even hold her, and then discovering that she could bear no more children, had pushed her one heartbreak too far. It had been a long road back for them both. Matt and Liz knew the bare bones of what had happened, but Will had never gone into detail about the full extent of Kate's emotional disorder. Now Kate seemed to be operating in overdrive, working all night in her studio and decorating by day. She accomplished miracles. Along with her reluctant workhorse, Will, she painted and papered, bringing the old house back to its former splendour. Will's more relaxed routine long abandoned, she even found time for longer walks on the marshes and the sea bank, sometimes disappearing for hours at a time. Will could only watch in horror, waiting for the inevitable crash. On this particular day, he was carrying some empty paint cans to the garage when he heard someone call out to him. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Stonebridge. Have you got a moment, sir?" Barry's foreman, an older man called Neville, was coming towards him along the drive. As he went out to meet him, Will experienced an odd disquiet. His gut began to churn, as it had when he was still in the force, a sure sign that something was not right. "You know that natural bit of higher ground behind the well, the mound we cleared last week and plan on cutting the terraces out of?" Will nodded. "It's not actually natural at all, sir. It's an old air raid shelter left over from the war. We don't rightly know what to do now, sir. Would you come and take a look at it?" He and Kate had often wondered about that piece of raised ground. Lincolnshire gardens were predominantly flat. In the end, they had decided that it must just be old topsoil, piled up and ready for a job that never got done. Weeds and brambles had covered it completely. "Well, I'm damned." "It's built a bit like an Anderson shelter, dug down into the ground and with them curved sheets of corrugated iron over the top. I remember playing in the one my gran had. She lived in the East End of London during the Blitz and used her shelter as a sort of garden shed for donkeys' years. Good fun for a kid, too. My brothers and I used to love it." Neville chuckled. "I'm surprised there's one on the Fens," Will said. "London certainly, but out here?" "Well, Greenborough's not far away. That was considered a prime target. East Coast port, you know. And this is Bomber County, Mr. Stonebridge. The Lancasters flew out of here every night on their missions. Didn't your dad tell you about 'em?" But Will's dad had died when he and his younger sister Eva were kids. Neville, well up on his local history, went on to tell Will about the thousands of evacuees who had poured into the rural villages after war was declared. Will had to stop him after a while and bring him back to the matter in hand. "So, is it intact?" "Dunno yet, sir. Thought you'd better see it first. It has a proper solid door, which is a bit unusual. Lots of folk used to just hang a curtain up. Doors meant no air and would have made it pretty uncomfortable. Our young Steve is still digging down to get it free." A young man with a selection of colourful tattoos and a shovel was moving great heaps of rich soil away from the old, damp wood. Sweat glistened off a ferocious-looking tiger and dripped across the heart-encircled Mandy. "Nearly there." He raked away some loose earth and threw his spade down with a gasp. "Hard work, no mistake." "Open her up, Steve, and I'll get you a cold beer," Will called out. The lad dragged on the old door. It opened with a squeal, and the three men peered in. As their eyes adjusted to the gloom, they made out 2 beds at either side of the shelter, with a small wooden table in between. A rickety bookcase stood just inside the door with a rusty bucket next to it. The bedclothes had long gone, but a hurricane lamp still stood on the table alongside a tin box. And when Will prized it open, he found a pack of dog-eared playing cards and a mildewed prayer book. No one spoke for a moment. Just as Will was about to make a comment, he looked back and saw his wife standing behind them. She looked gaunt, deathly pale. She was staring past them into the shelter. Slowly, as if in a trance, she moved forward between them. Then Will saw what she was looking at. On the roughly constructed duckboard floor lay a toy, a handmade rag doll with scrappy woolen hair and an embroidered face. It was filthy. With something like reverence, Kate picked it up, tried to smooth its tattered and dirt-stained smock, and, holding it like a baby, turned and walked away. The workmen looked at each other uncomfortably. Unable to offer an explanation for his wife's odd behaviour, Will turned and ran after her. She had gone to her studio, of course, and he dared not follow her in. He stood on the landing, unsure of what to do. No sound came from behind the door, but he knew she was in there. He called her name, softly at first, then a little louder, but she did not reply. He wanted to beat on the door, kick it in if necessary, drag her out and scream at her to pull herself together. But he stood where he was, mute and powerless to act. After a while he returned to the garden with a can of lager for each of the men. He had nothing to say about Kate's behaviour, but he didn't want the village hearing that the woman at Holland House was crazy, so he mumbled something about her being very overtired after completing a gruelling assignment, and working so many late nights had stressed her out a bit. Then he attempted to turn their attention back to their rather strange find. Neville said that the air raid shelter was set low in the ground with an awful lot of soil heaped on top of it. They could still continue with their original design, or they could pull the whole thing out and get rid of it. What did he think? To Will there was no question. Get rid of it. It was a sad reminder of a horrible and frightening time. For a moment he heard the drone of the enemy bombers and saw the flashes as the baskets of incendiaries fell. He heard screaming. He shook himself. This was not like him. Heavens, when he was born the war was just a memory. While realizing that Kate was not going to be happy with the decision concerning her precious Holland House that she had not been privy to, he told the men to rip it out and get shot of it. Neville glanced skywards and said it looked as if it would have to be a job for the following day. Great boiling black clouds had gathered, and before the men could collect up their tools and run for cover, a violent storm had descended upon them. Will shouted that he would see them the following day, but his words were lost in the wind. By the time he reached the kitchen, his clothes were soaked, and water was streaming from him onto the tiled floor. He ran to their bedroom, stripped off his wet clothes, and towelled himself down. Wearing a dry sweatshirt and joggers, he went back out onto the landing. "Kate, darling, come out and talk to me, please." The silence ate into him. He wanted to scream, to break something, but instead he slipped slowly down the wall until he was sitting outside her door. "Kate, I'm staying here until you come out. If it takes a week, fine, I'll still be here." Some 10 minutes later he heard footsteps moving towards the door. He listened to the bolt being drawn back. His wife came out. She stared down at him, frowning. "You look pretty silly sitting there, Will. Let's go and have some tea, shall we?" She began to walk away from him. "And there will be no talk of getting rid of the shelter. It stays, understand? Now, tea or coffee?" The shelter stayed. Will looked down from the bedroom window where he was busy fitting a sash cord. He couldn't forget those glassy, unblinking eyes and the expression on his wife's face when she had said, "Understand?" He shuddered whenever it came back to him. Now the shelter was covered with fresh soil, which Kate had planted with a carpet of late summer flowers. Just as it was. That's how it should be. She had spent a morning clearing it out. She'd brushed dirt from the floor, rust from the metalwork, rubbed down the old woodwork and oiled the creaking hinges. She had refused his help on the grounds that if he were prepared to destroy it in the first place, he had no reason to assist her in its restoration. He had been in touch with Matt and Liz during the days since the discovery of the shelter. He sensed that they knew something was terribly wrong, but he hadn't had the heart to talk to them. On one occasion they had called in to tell him that he had been right about Gerald Grove, and Kate had made a brief appearance. They had barely been able to disguise their shock. Yesterday he had gone to their new GP on the pretext of needing stronger painkillers. He had gone fully intending to ask the doctor for help with his troubled wife. But once he was seated in the slightly shabby surgery, he had found himself incapable of discussing her. He couldn't do it. He couldn't betray her. He tightened the sash cord and tested it. They had come through it before and would do so again. Their love for each other would sustain them. He had recently discovered that the nicer he was to the house, the more he did, even the smallest of chores, the better Kate's mood became. Thus he continued to busy himself with useful jobs. Two things did disturb him, however, and one of these was the doll. A few evenings ago Kate had been working in her room when she suddenly went off to the bathroom, leaving her door wide open. Will had taken the opportunity to snatch a glance inside, in the hopes of seeing something of her latest painting. All he had seen were covered benches, and to his surprise, sitting on the long window seat looking blindly out over Whisper Fen, the doll from the air raid shelter. Not filthy as it had been, but freshly washed, its woolen braids carefully untangled, and its smock neatly ironed. He had hurried into their bedroom, where he had sat on the bed feeling slightly queasy. She had even re-stitched the face. It was just a hasty glance, but long enough to see it. His wife had cleverly embroidered it in such a way that instead of the usual blank face, it wore a very adult expression. The rather too full lips were now twisted into a sort of sneer. Surely, he reasoned, it had to be a trick of the light. But for a second, he had seen something distinctly corrupt about that face. And worse, it immediately brought Gerald Grove to mind. Then there were Kate's occasional excursions. She had made it abundantly clear that he was not welcome on these trips, which she said were either research for her paintings or to look for items she needed for the restoration of the house. She was out again now, but this time he was slightly less anxious. The following day was his birthday, and Kate was good at birthdays. She knew that he was a big kid where his birthdays were concerned, and without fail she made his day one to remember. He recalled the time she had treated him to a trip in a hot air balloon. It was unforgettable. Even if she was embroiled with Holland House, Kate would have thought of something special for him. She always did. He gathered up his tools and went downstairs. Maybe this was a good time to ring Matt and ask if they could meet up. His anxiety was becoming too much to bear. But maybe he should just take a look at her latest paintings before ringing his friend, so he had something more concrete to tell him. Slowly he mounted the stairs and stood in front of the studio door. Kate's studio had been a medium-sized bedroom that she had chosen for its unusual window and the uninterrupted view over the marsh. The lock was old and stiff. He would never be able to pick it. The only way in was from the outside. He knew the long floor-to-ceiling window did not open, but there was a smaller window next to it with a sill. He had noticed earlier that it was on the latch. Looking up, he remembered promising to clean the windows this week. Now seemed an excellent time to start. From his vantage point at the top of the ladder he looked out at Whisper Fen. Here and there the sun, reflected off the dark waters of the lagoons, produced stars that flashed and sparkled. A line of seabirds flew into the marsh on silent wings. How beautiful their new home was. If it weren't for Kate's obsession with the place, it would indeed be a perfect place to live. With a sigh, he turned his back on the view and began to clean the window. Once that was done, he pulled the side window open and stepped in over the sill, keeping his gaze away from the doll. Kate's studio looked, as it always did, tidy and orderly. Her brushes were all clean and arranged in pots according to size. Fresh pads, books, and boards were stacked neatly under the benches, and her workbench was clear. But there were a tremendous number of finished canvases stacked with their faces turned towards the wall. Glancing back out of the window, Will pulled round the first one to face him. He gasped. It was horrible. Staring back at him was a dark form, indistinct except for a pair of pale, hollow eyes with yellow irises. It seemed to be leaving a cellar by way of some steep and rotting stairs. Will swallowed hard. Beneath its arm, tucked in close and almost hidden in its pitchy vestments, it carried a child. All that could be seen of it was a white arm and hand, chubby fingers grasping a teddy bear, and a slight glint from a lock of golden hair that fell over the partially concealed shoulder. Where did this nightmare of a painting come from? Will thought of Kate's fairy pictures, so full of light, vivid with life and colour. Now this monstrosity, oozing decay and evil intent. What was going on in her mind? With a beating heart and full of trepidation, he began to take out the others. They were all similar to that first one, and each featured a dead child. He ran back to the window and climbed out. As he placed a shaking foot onto the first rung of his ladder, he caught sight of the doll. The face, even in the sunlight, wore a sneer, as if it watched him in secret amusement. That look chilled Will to the marrow. He hurriedly descended the ladder and sat down heavily on the seat that overlooked the fen. The scene had lost its magic. All at once it had a sinister quality. His wife had told him that she could think better out in the desolate marsh. Well, now he knew what those thoughts were about, and he shuddered. He had just half risen to go and ring Matt and Liz when he saw Kate's car swing round the bend in the lane. Wondering how he was going to face her, he realised that she had stopped the car in the tiny lay-by where the rough path out to the sluice and the far end of Tyler's Lane branched off. Someone got out of the passenger seat, and to his horror the unmistakable figure of Gerald Grove slammed the door and made its way out onto Whisper Fen. Will's fear and concern for Kate turned to anger. He had warned her to stay away from Grove, and now she was giving him lifts. It was the final straw. Seething, he strode towards the car, but his anger melted when he saw her get out. She looked as ghostly as one of her pictures. For the first time, he noticed that she had lost so much weight that her clothes no longer fitted her. She looked at him through dark-rimmed eyes and said forlornly that her trip had not gone well, and please would he make her a cup of tea. So, without saying a word about her passenger, he took her bags and went inside to boil a kettle. Kate sat with her fingers wrapped round her mug of tea, tears slowly running down her face. He put his arm around her, and she looked up at him pathetically. There was another child, you know. Another Holland child died here. His initial reaction was to shout, shake her out of this nonsense. Instead, he drew his chair closer and calmly asked her to tell him about it. She fell into the well. She used to sit on the wooden cover, which was perfectly strong, so no one ever considered it a dangerous thing to do. Well, one day it gave way under her, or so everyone believed. She was alone at the time, so no one saw what actually happened. "How do you know all this, sweetheart?" Will asked, keeping his voice steady. "I went to see Mrs. Holland today in the nursing home. I had to. I had to know more about Whisper Fen. It has secrets, Will, and we should know what they are. Otherwise they could be dangerous, especially to the people around us." It had never crossed Will's mind that Kate would visit the old woman. "How do you mean, Kate? What danger?" "Children have no place here, Will, that's all. You have friends at the police station with children. They mustn't ever come here. Never." Once more Will was tempted to shake her, knowing that this would only drive her away from him. He assented to what she had said. He had no idea how to deal with this. He had to talk to Matt. Having told him, she seemed much calmer. She went on to tell him that the child had been 7, a tomboy. Her name was Ruth, the only daughter of Mrs. Holland's sister. After a while he saw her eyelids drooping. She was fighting off sleep. "Right, Mrs. Stonebridge, you are going upstairs to spend the rest of the afternoon in bed. Look at you, you're exhausted." Kate got to her feet wearily. "Come up with me." He took her up to the bedroom and watched her undress. She flopped down onto the bed and slept almost immediately. Will pulled the curtains, shut the door, and tiptoed down the stairs. Outside in the garden he sat beneath the rowan tree and pulled out his